Have you ever stopped to think about how your beliefs actually shape the way you see the world? And even yourself? Most of us never question it. We just inherit ideas from our families, communities, cultures, and they become the lenses we look through. But today, we are going to explore something unique. How Jewish beliefs from ancient times right up to modern day shape psychology, not just for Jews, but for anyone interested in how faith, identity, and mental health intertwine. So grab your coffee or tea, settle in, and let's take a fascinating journey through history, tradition, resilience, and the human mind. Introducing Jewish beliefs, a foundation for understanding. Let's start with a bit of a time travel. Jewish beliefs didn't pop up overnight. They evolved over thousands of years, rooted in the Torah, the foundational text of Judaism. Back then, Jewish identity was deeply tied to land, temple, and very specific rituals. But history happened. Empires rose and fell. The Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE, and Jews were scattered across the globe. There's no single monolithic Jewish view. There are Orthodox Jews, Reformed Jews, secular Jews who still cherish cultural traditions, and everything in between. Because beliefs don't just sit in books or synagogues, they shape people's sense of who they are, and then branching out through centuries of commentary, debate, exile, return, and reinterpretation. There's always been a powerful emphasis on belonging. It was survival. Think leads us straight. Studies in Jewish communities have shown that seeing suffering through the lens of shared purpose or historical continuity can actually build resilience. We'll also look at how traditional beliefs can both help and complicate the way people understand things like anxiety, depression, and seeking help. It's a way of framing hardship not as pointless agony, but as part of a larger, sometimes mysterious, story. Into one of the most profound aspects of Jewish belief, how it deals with suffering. About it here, suffering often ties back to questions of purpose. It's not simply bad luck or meaningless pain. There's a long tradition of wrestling with God, literally and metaphorically, to understand hardship, which translates to repairing the world. It's one of the most beautiful concepts. Rather than turning inward or giving up in the face of suffering, Jewish thought often redirects people outward. The idea is that every person carries some responsibility to fix what is broken, whether that's in society, relationships, or even within oneself. A people who faced repeated waves of persecution from ancient Babylon to medieval Europe, from pogroms in Russia to the horrors of the Holocaust. In response, Jewish identity became a kind of protective glue. Picture it, ancient Israel, the time of kings and prophets, of Moses bringing down tablets from Sinai. This scattering didn't erase Jewish beliefs, it diversified them. It's sometimes misunderstood, even criticized. But in many Jewish teachings, being chosen isn't about superiority, it's about responsibility. It means being called to live out certain values, to carry moral and ethical duties, and to remain connected through thick and thin. As communities settled in places like Spain, Poland, Morocco, and Yemen, they carried their core ideas with them, but also adapted to local cultures. Weekly Shabbat dinners, annual festivals like Passover, life cycle events from bar mitzvahs to weddings, they aren't just old customs. Psychologically, they're anchors. They give individuals a stable identity in a world that often feels chaotic. They say, you belong. You're part of something bigger than yourself. Fast forward to the Enlightenment in Europe, you get movements like Reformed Judaism, which reshape age-old practices to fit modern values. So today, when we say Jewish beliefs, we're actually talking about a rich, complex mosaic, and that is important to understand before we dive into how these beliefs influence psychology, because that means there is room for many perspectives, not just one rigid framework. Impact of beliefs on identity. Now let's get personal. For Jewish communities, community wasn't optional. This is where the concept of the chosen people often comes up. Tradition and ritual also play a huge role here. Faith, suffering, and resilience, because let's be real, suffering is a universal part of being human, but different cultures give it different meanings. In Jewish thought, then there's Tikkun Olam. This isn't just lofty philosophy. It deeply impacts how people cope. In part 2, we'll dive into how Jewish psychology, yes, that's actually a growing field, explores the interplay between faith and mental health. Jewish psychology, faith and the mind, all right. Let's talk psychology, because while we've covered identity and resilience on a broad level, there is actually a whole niche called Jewish psychology that has been developing more formally over the last few decades. It explores how specifically Jewish values, stories, and communal frameworks shape a person's mental health and approach to life. There's a running joke in Jewish communities about the Jewish mother, always worried, always hovering, sometimes overloading kids with guilt. While it's an exaggerated stereotype, there's a cultural truth underneath. Many Jewish families place a huge emphasis on responsibility, on living up to communal expectations, on not being the one who breaks a chain that stretches back thousands of years. Take anxiety and guilt, for example. Jewish history is filled with stories of exile, oppression, and miraculous survival. These stories aren't abstract. They get riddled at holiday tables, in synagogue readings, and even in casual family conversations. Jewish therapists and scholars have noted how navigating this tension, wanting personal freedom while honoring deep traditions, is a common theme in counseling Jewish clients. This is why culturally sensitive therapy is so important. Counselors who understand these nuances can help people balance respect for their past with a healthy present. This can build strong moral character, sure, but it can also add pressure, prayer, communal support, shared rituals, studying sacred texts. They're more than religious practices. When someone dies, the family stays home for 7 days, surrounded by visitors who come to share stories, pray, even just sit quietly together. There's no pressure to be okay immediately. Instead, grief is acknowledged, structured, and supported by community. But from a psychological perspective, they're powerful frameworks for handling life. They can ground someone in moments of stress or loss, offering both comfort and perspective. On the flip side, these same traditions also provide powerful tools for coping. You start your day by acknowledging life as a gift. You pause before meals to appreciate sustenance. These tiny moments can dramatically shape someone's mental outlook. Instead of viewing God as a puppet master, they emphasize a relationship model. Humans work alongside the divine to heal themselves and the world. It ties back beautifully to that idea of Tikkun Olam, repairing what's broken together. The double-edged sword of collective memory, whether you're Jewish or not. These lessons hold profound insights for anyone trying to live a thoughtful, resilient life. Another fascinating piece of the puzzle is collective memory. On the one hand, this keeps people deeply connected. Psychologists who work in Jewish communities often talk about a kind of inherited trauma, sometimes called post-Holocaust generational anxiety. It's deeply psychological, because if your belief system can't give satisfying answers, it can become a source of distress rather than comfort. Questions like, if God controls everything, where does my own agency come in? How do I take responsibility for my mental health versus just having faith it'll improve? Even young Jews today, who didn't live through those horrors, can carry subtle fears rooted in their family history. It is hard to feel completely alone in your struggles when your family and community are always referencing ancestors who endured far. Worse, you become part of a narrative of perseverance, but it can also cast long shadows for some. That collective memory means living with a baseline sense of vigilance, a feeling that tragedy is always just around the corner. So it's complicated. The same memory that strengthens identity and unity can also fuel anxiety. Rituals as psychological tools. Now let's zero in on rituals. We often think of them as strictly religious. Lighting Shabbat candles, fasting on Yom Kippur, reading from the Torah. Consider morning rituals like sitting Shiva. Modern psychology completely agrees with this approach. Avoiding grief can lead to prolonged emotional distress, while structured communal mourning actually helps people process loss in healthy ways. Even small daily rituals, saying a blessing before eating, or reciting the Moda any prayer upon waking up, reinforce gratitude and mindfulness. Modern challenges and evolving beliefs, of course. Like any ancient system meeting a modern world, Jewish psychological frameworks face challenges. For some, traditional interpretations can clash with modern ideas of autonomy. Others wrestle with the concept of theodicy, why bad things happen to good people. This isn't just theological. Many modern Jewish thinkers and therapists try to navigate this by focusing on partnership. In Part 3, we'll look at how all of this, from collective memory to daily rituals, ties into broader questions of meaning, purpose, and ultimately human flourishing. Finding meaning beyond just surviving, so we've talked about identity, community, memory, ritual, and resilience. But at the end of the day, all of this funnels into a single, enormous question: what makes life meaningful? But for anyone who wrestles with how to live well in a chaotic, often painful world, this is where Jewish perspectives offer some of the most powerful insights, not just for Jews. The Torah begins not with tragedy or punishment, but with creation, a world that's repeatedly called good. Humans are described as made in the image of God, Tezlam Elohim, implying inherent worth and dignity. One of the central ideas in Jewish thought is that life is fundamentally good and purposeful, even when it doesn't always feel that way. That belief could be a profound buffer against despair. This simple idea has massive psychological implications. It suggests that no matter how flawed or broken you feel, your life has divine value, purpose tied to action. These aren't just arbitrary rules. They're a framework for turning ordinary life into a sacred journey. But it doesn't stop there. It tells people you're allowed to be a work in progress. In fact, striving and falling and trying again might be exactly where the deepest growth happens. It's the power of action over rumination. Doing something, however minor, often breaks cycles of hopelessness. But the Jewish model of continual return teshuvah, not just once a year on Yom Kippur, a day, means you can always recalibrate, always start again. In Jewish tradition, meaning isn't something you just think about. It's something you do. It's symbolic. It's about never closing the door on hope. It's a mental orientation toward better days. This is why there are so many commandments, mitzvot, from ethical obligations like honesty and charity to rituals that keep spiritual ideas alive in daily habits, a refusal to let tragedy be the final chapter. As Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Psychologically, having a clear set of practices or missions, even small ones, helps people move through depression and anxiety. So when Jewish teachings emphasize visiting the sick, feeding the hungry, lighting candles to mark sacred time, they're giving people tangible ways to shape meaning, one small deed at a time, humility and imperfection. Unlike some philosophies that idealize spiritual perfection, Jewish texts are filled with flawed heroes. It's about building a life worth living, and Jewish thought, with its blend of realism and relentless hope, offers a blueprint for that. Moses lost his temper. David fell into temptation. Even great sages admit confusion and struggle. There's also a beautiful honesty in Jewish approaches to human frailty. There's so much more we're going to explore together. The Talmud says, even the righteous have struggles. This normalizes imperfection. In therapy terms, this is gold. So many people spiral because they expect themselves to be flawless. The role of hope, a future-focused faith. Another often overlooked psychological strength in Jewish tradition is its emphasis on the future. Think about it. Every Passover, Jews say next year in Jerusalem, even if they know they might never physically get there. Holocaust survivors who rebuilt families, communities, and even humor after unthinkable horrors often cite this stubborn hope. Why this matters for everyone. So you don't have to be Jewish to take something valuable from all this, whether it's seeing your life as inherently valuable even when you mess up, grounding your days in small meaningful actions, connecting to a community that remembers and supports, or keeping a candle lit for future possibilities. These ideas can transform how anyone navigates uncertainty and pain, because ultimately, psychology isn't just about fixing what's broken. closing invitation, so here's what I'd love for you to reflect on. What gives your life meaning? What small rituals or communities help you stay grounded? Drop a comment below. Your story might resonate with someone who really needs it. And if you want more deep dives into the intersection of faith, psychology, and timeless wisdom, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. Thanks for spending this time with me. See you in the next video.